All right. Well, now, Ticks, I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Wednesday hump day. Always in a good mood on Wednesday. I didn't even realize it was Wednesday until I just said that. I shouldn't say I'm always in a good mood. But yeah, the week's kind of half over. So that's, I guess, a positive. Although, who wants to be rooting for time to run away? I don't know. Yeah, wow. All right. So the question... why are so many trying to save the Democratic Party when it seems so clear that it's not even on life support? I mean, it's the cancer, the corruption cancer has metastasized through the party, and there's no rooting it out. I mean, if you tried to get all the poisons, the toxins that have completely befouled the Democratic Party, if you got them all out of the party, you'd have nothing left. You'd have no healthy tissue left. There's just none. I mean, just witness, obviously, AOC is a perfect example, right? I mean, who is decent in the party? Who is uncorrupted? Who is even close? You know, maybe a Rashida Tlaib, maybe. But that's about as far as I'm going to go. Maybe an Ilhan Omar, although there are real questions about her support for repressive, regressive elements. I've heard that from credible sources, her position on Somalian issues, she is a Somali, is not all that it could be. It's not so progressive. It is not anti-imperialist. It is not pro-worker, pro-poor. Now, that's what I've heard on some videos. I don't know how accurate it is. I know she got pushed back in Minneapolis. Wait, she's Minneapolis. Yeah, she got some pushback. Tlaib is Palestinian. She's in Michigan. So even the best Democrats, there are very, very few who I would even consider good. There's questions. So let's put it that way. And I don't mean to be besmirching them, because I would vote for, as far as I know, unless I knew something different than I know now, Ilhan Omar, I would vote for Rashida Tlaib. I don't think I'd vote for AOC. I don't think so. So yeah, there you go. The thumbnail we're using shows. Doesn't he look awfully like excited? It seems to me in that picture there with Netanyahu. Jeffries, he's kind of just sort of bending the knee, isn't he? There. This was back a couple. It was before. You know, maybe this is unfair. This picture was taken before October 7, but in 23. You can see, look at how kind of like he's kissing. It doesn't, Jeffrey, just the body language, the smile. It's like he's just sort of giddy, thrilled. Oh my God, here's the guy that I'm getting so much money because I support him, right? That's the attitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Prime Minister Netanyahu, for your support, for supporting me. Well, I can understand that if you have that look, you're not going to be challenging him. You're not going to be saying, no, you can't just kill millions. You can't starve millions of people to death, steal the land of their cousins on the other side of your country. No, we're not going to let you do that. That's not something that Hakeem Jeffries will do. He's not going to do that. And remember, this man, Hakeem Jeffries, there on the right, and by the way, so they're on the right there in this image. He was the unanimous pick of the House Democrats to be their leader. The unanimous pick to be their leader. That's your Democratic Party. That's the party that people tell us you have to support. You must vote blue no matter who. I don't think so. That's not where I am. The war, the slaughter that Hakeem Jeffries supports, unconditionally, right? I don't believe there's ever been any questioning by him over what Israel's doing. One of his concerns about Mamdani, well, he's globalized the Intifada. You know, we can't have people globalizing challenges to Israel when it's committing genocide. That's your Democratic leader. Gaza death toll, I told you this yesterday. Every day it seems like it ticks up another 100. Today, another 76 identified dead versus yesterday. Death toll near 62,900 is brutal. Killing continues. 10 more Gazans die of starvation. That's where we are. That's what our nation is supporting. That's what your Republican and Democratic Party support. We've got to count now of 62,895 Gazans confirmed killed by Israel. And understand, again, that number, we talk about this over and over, is a serious undercount for several reasons. Many people who died from war or genocide related conditions aren't necessarily included. Heart attack, stress, suicide, they may not be included in that total of 62,895. And more, even importantly, a more significant reason for the count to be considered very, very low and undercount is that many bodies just haven't been recovered. We just don't know where the dead are. They're just under so much rubble. Nobody knows. Trump and Netanyahu have killed over 11,000 Gazans now, including likely over 5,500 women and children. So again, this is what our nation is responsible for. This is what we are guilty of. We are guilty of supporting without any restrictions, any qualifications, genocide. Both parties. I will not, vote for that. I will not vote for a candidate. I don't care which party they're on. I don't care how they frame themselves. I don't care whether their supporters say they're the lesser of evils. They really, in their heart, oppose what Israel's doing. No, I want to hear the words. I want to hear a commitment to stopping this. I was first taken by this piece, by the way, in Common Dream. So we're going to talk about that, about how this party is beyond repair, beyond redemption. And also why there are many who are trying, I guess, to redeem it or get you to believe they're redeemable, or to get you to believe they're not even as bad as, well, I tell you they are, or that your lying eyes might tell you they are. I was really at first, and I have to tell you, I read this piece. I generally don't read anything that closely these days. That's a problem I have. But at first, I thought, wow, this is pretty good for Common Dreams, because the quote progressive unquote media, meaning like Common Dreams, online journals like Common Dreams, Jacobin, The Nation for sure, they have really pulled their punches. They'll go after the Democrats to a degree. They'll criticize them. They'll take issue with specific Democratic actions. But all of them, even Jacobin, have made the case that the Democrat Party needs to be repaired, taken over, that it is ultimately the vessel that can be the ship that takes us to freedom. And that's just not the case. And it's really disheartening. It's disappointing that every progressive institution, every leftist institution continues to make that case, because they're preventing us from solving our problems. They're preventing us, which of course is what this program is all about. It's about coming up with solutions. I just had the bring that phone. I wasn't sure it was going to work, so we heard it. So it's working. That means you call 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. Les Leopold asking, does the Democratic Party have a death wish in Common Dreams? And I was thinking, this is the piece I've been waiting for. This is the piece. Now, it's Common Dreams. Isn't, they're not big circulation, more than I have, of course, but not a large reach. But this guy, Leopold, I think, is a former labor leader. He has some, maybe considered to have some chops within the Democratic Party's left flank. So I'm like, wow. And certainly Common Dreams has presented itself as a far left Democratic organ rather than a leftist organ that rejects the neoliberal warmonger corporatists who control the Democrat Party. So I thought, well, this is a good thing. Maybe the Common Dreams is finally coming around. And while reading the piece, I said, yeah, this is pretty good. It only was when I read comments. By the way, there you go. Please click subscribe now. Don't forget. Click subscribe. Click the like. Let me show you in case you were wondering. There's a little thumbs up at the bottom of the video as you're looking at it on your screen. So I'd love to have you click the like. Any interaction, we talk about this, any interaction helps us get past that algorithm. And I will say, I have never been one for the theory, I wouldn't call it a conspiracy theory exactly, for the theory that YouTube, because of my content, or Google, which owns YouTube, because of the content of Halitics, would sort of suppress it, would prevent it from being put in front of lots of folks who watch videos. I never believed that. My attitude has always been, nah, they don't really make political judgments. It's just I have a small viewership, and if my videos don't perform well off the bat, they're just not going to get any real promotions. But I think maybe I'm sort of coming around to the view that they are suppressing videos. They are deprecating them. They are keeping them from being put in more feeds if the videos take on the establishment line, the American war establishment, the imperialist line. If you go after the military-industrial complex, if you go after the corporatists, the profiteers, the polluters, if that's what your videos are all about, it may be harder for you to build an audience, in part because of the quote algorithm, unquote, and how it chooses to present videos. Now, there's a way around that. So I can only go so far with that, because I do have some viewers. I do have subscribers. If you subscribe, if you click the bell, then you'll get notified every time I go live. And I put this on YouTube, as Facebook as well. So it's out there. It's viewable. It's visible. You just have to maybe make a little bit greater effort than you might otherwise if I was, say, talking about, making cat videos, or talking about my my laptop, which I could talk about because I'm pretty happy with my laptop, which is, I believe, 14 plus years old. But I don't talk about my laptop, and I don't talk about cats. I do talk about contemporary politics and how we can make things a little better in America and around the world. And my message, I don't think, is congenial to the tech bros, the corporate elites, the Zio-Nazis. None of them like what I have to say. And for that reason, perhaps this doesn't get as much viewership as it might otherwise. If you have a thought on that, would love to talk to you at any time. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646 when I'm live. And again, that's one of the things we do here at Halitics that you really don't get elsewhere. We have the dialogue. We have the conversation. All right, from Common Dreams. Let me just add on that, because I think it's really important. No one has all the answers. No one should be viewed as a font of genius and wisdom. Some people do look at, I guess, a guy like Robert Reich or a Hartman or someone of that ilk, and they think, oh, they just are so smart, they know so much. And, they know some things. And I think Robert Reich especially is very intelligent, obviously. But, they have their own biases, and more to the point, they have their own discrete interests. What's important to Robert Reich, what matters to Robert Reich, may have little or no relevance in your life. And for that reason, I think it is important we hear as many voices as possible, and we discuss the challenges that each of us is facing and how we can make sure that everyone's life is good, everyone has enough. This is from Les Leopold, again, in Common Dreams. Many of my friends, this is about redeeming the party, right? This is my view. Many of my friends and colleagues nevertheless believe that the Democratic Party can come to its senses and once again appeal to the economic needs of working people. This is so true what he's writing. There are lots and lots of people who believe, well, the party isn't great, but as long as we can make them do the right thing. That's what they ask us to do. We haven't done a good enough job making them do what they should do. No, you should just do what you should do. You shouldn't need me to make you, however that means, do what you should do. You should just do what you should do. So Leopold's saying, if only we can show them enough data about progressive populism and how it's appealing and popular, then they will start campaigning, and they will start messaging, and they will start governing when they have the power in a better way. That's the whole theory, right? Between the takeover of the Democratic Party and, we got to campaign for better candidates, and we got to hold accountable the ones who are in office. And this guy's saying, well, what is he saying? He says many believe that would work. Does he think it will work? No. In a word, no. He says it's unlikely to happen. Leadership isn't going to listen. Democrats aren't going to do what we want. Why? Well, most importantly, the leaders don't believe in those messages. They don't want us to interfere with corporate capitalism, and they don't want to put out messages that will offend their donors. They have no problem with economic inequality and no desire to refrain from trading stocks and bonds in office. Well, how could anyone dispute all that? He doesn't write they're corrupt in all caps, but that's exactly what he's saying. Yes, of course. And for those who say, well, we just need different leaders, if only AOC, if only Ilhan Omar, if only Rashida Tlaib, if only Jamie Raskin were the Democratic leader, everything would be okay. Well, guess what? First of all, those names I just gave you, I already mentioned this, but I'm going to keep saying it. They all voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be their leader. And they have also, AOC, stymied in her attempt to become a leader. So she's not in a position to be a leader, right? She was going to be the ranking Democrat in the House Oversight Committee. No, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to put a literally dying man in that position. So there's zero reason. First of all, we know the party leadership is corrupt. We know the party leadership. Steny Hoyer, former whip, I guess, just came back from Israel on a AIPAC-funded trip. So he ain't changing nothing. You thought Catherine Clark, right? Number 2, she would perhaps, she represents the younger generation. I think she's only about in her 50s. So for the Dems, that's really young, right? She's just a young pup compared to the rest of the leaders there. Although I guess Jeffries and Clark are actually a little young, because it used to be Clark, 62 years old. I'm sorry. Yeah, she did look a little older than 50s. I shouldn't have thought that. I don't know how old Jeffries is. I'm going to guess he's a little younger, 55. So this is a lot younger than the Democratic Party of Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, right? But there's no meaningful change in policies. They're not espousing progressive populism. They're not calling for Medicare for all. They're not demanding some kind of cuts even to Israel. None of that. So this is your new Democratic Party is exactly the same as the old one. And that's not a good one. It ain't good at all. So Leopold gets that. He's telling you this in Common Dreams. So what he clearly gets that this is a really bad party. here, and you see the sense here. So Epstein messaging. So what he's kind of rejecting the idea, because I don't have the section of the article in this where he talks about Epstein, but he's basically saying is Democrats are focusing on Epstein. Release the files. Release the files. If only we get those files released. That's the latest argument. If only they release those files, we'll see just how bad Trump is, because he's in those files. He was probably part of the, he was maybe involved with having sex with underage girls, knew what was going on, winked and nodded, covered it up. Looks really bad. So I think is a good place for Democrats to argue. Yeah, I don't think they've been as full-throated as in demanding the release of the Epstein files as Leopold seems to suggest. But I think it is a good area for them to push. Apparently, Leopold doesn't, and I understand why he says that. He's saying that Democratic leaders are using the Epstein files and their call to release the Epstein files to distract from their failure to promote progressive populism. In other words, just like when Raskin called for and held the impeachment hearings after Trump was out of office. Just like the way Raskin grandstanded for months on CNN, MSNBC, and the page of the New York Times, Democracy Now!, to avoid a conversation about Medicare for all. That was the function of those impeachment hearings. They certainly didn't lead to Trump being impeached. They didn't present or adduce the kind of evidence that would prevent the American public from reelecting Trump. So the function of Raskin's grandstanding impeachment efforts in 21 was to keep the Democratic Party from having to respond to the will of the people, demanding Medicare for all, demanding a $15 minimum wage. Well, what Leopold is arguing, and maybe he's right, the function of the Democrats' call to release the Epstein files is to prevent demands from or to avoid having to promote progressive populism. And that may be the case. In any event, what Leopold is saying is even if the Democrats did start pushing really good policies, it's too late. 40 years of kissing Wall Street's ass cannot be undone by a PR campaign. Now, I think they should call for progressive, truly progressive policies, popular policies, policies that the American public want. I think they should be doing that as one. I think they should be demanding that Republicans follow them. Some would. For example, cutting off Israel would actually receive support from some Republicans, especially Thomas Massie, and perhaps, at least to some degree, from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She wouldn't, I believe, she wouldn't say we should not sell arms to Israel, although Massie maybe would. But she would say we shouldn't provide Israel with anything that they don't pay for. So there are opportunities to make inroads into the Republican or Trump MAGA world, universe, if Democrats did in fact unite on policy. But what Leopold is saying is it's a PR campaign because they don't have the majority. They can't actually pass laws. No, but I think, again, it's not really PR. If the Democratic Party said this is what we stand for, and they were specific, we stand for making it much easier for workers to unionize, to ban right to work laws, so-called right to work laws. And we support Trump's efforts to raise the cost of imported goods, and we want to work with them on it. If they did that, they would actually also gain influence. So it's not just PR. But what Leopold does point out, most voters don't trust the Democrats to deliver, even when they say the right thing. That's correct. So then you have to you have to deliver as well when you can, where you can, in states where you have the ability to do so, and they don't. So Leopold seems very clear in the pages of Common Dreams that the Democrat Party is a failed party. and we must move on. And he kind of almost goes there, right? He says, we need an independent party. So I'm like, wow, I can't believe this. We need an independent party. But then he pulls back. He says we need to elect Democrats to tamp Trump's rampage. But you just said that nobody believes them. They're not going to get support. They're not going to do the right thing anyway because Democratic leadership doesn't believe in progressive policies. So why are you saying we should elect Democrats? It's the old lesser, well, they'll tamp Trump's rampage. But will they? With where? What? He wants voters to build a new independent party of working people that only competes in districts where Democrats aren't. And not only, where progressive Democrats aren't, okay, well, we shouldn't run against AOC because she's so great. But he's even saying if they're purple, if it's close, if it's a Josh Gottheimer, if it's a Jim Clyburn. No, we're not going to challenge them. Just in one-party Republican districts and states, like Dan Osborne in Nebraska. No, that's wrong. You got to challenge Democrat, every last one of them. To be perfectly honest, every last Democrat needs to be confronted, challenged. Rashida Tlaib, I would say to her, why'd you vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be your leader? What was that about? I understand your heart is bleeding for your people who are being genocided by Israel with the full support of the U.S. Government, Congress, and the president. Why'd you vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be your leader since he's hand in glove with the Zionazi regime? It's worth asking, isn't it? So I put this question out there. Let's see. I'm going to try to get it full screen so you can read it because it was a little bad. So this was my comment in response. And the reason I'm showing you my comment here is because we're going to really talk about this. Leopold goes almost to the line, but then doesn't cross it, right? Well, yes, we need to be more aggressive. We need to be more assertive. We need to go after Republicans in areas where it doesn't hurt Democrats. We need to also go after Democrats. And I know one of the most dispiriting aspects of the so-called left and its resistance is its refusal to champion the Green Party, right? We don't even need a new party. Why is he talking about some independent workers' party? That's the Green Party. And I understand the Green Party has some issues. But man, that would be a hell of a lot easier to, I think, not even take it over, but to move the Green Party into a more aggressively pro-labor posture. It's doable rather than try to build a brand new party. So one of the most dispiriting aspects, I believe, is the refusal of the left to try to lead, or at least resistance groups, to try to lead members into the Green Party. And we saw this most clearly in 24 when groups like PDA, Progressive Democrats, Our Revolution, DSA tried to help elect Harris, or as they put it, to defeat Trump, right? Because they're saying we're not endorsing Harris. That's why I wrote it that way. They're not saying vote for, we have to elect Harris. She's so great. We just have to defeat Trump. And you defeat Trump by electing Harris. So it's, it's a yin or a yang. It's an A or a B. It's a 0 or a 1. They don't see it's a zero-sum game. They don't see, well, no, wait a sec. We can say none of the above. And in fact, they went after Jill Stein. Even now, when the Dem Party is, if anything, worse, it's worse now than it even was in 24. These groups continue to try to corral their members into supporting Dems. It's almost like their leaders are embedded in the party and can raise, or believe they can raise, more funds to pay their six-figure salaries by demonizing Trump and calling to reform irredeemable Democrats, rather than by embracing a pro-worker, pro-peace, pro-environment strategy. And it almost is like that. And that's what we're seeing. And that ain't working. That's leading us right to where we are, a terrible, terrible place. So I was really, I mean, the Democratic DNC is really in the news, couple of big stories, and our revolution kind of leading the way. My former employer, right? I worked for them, so I know a lot about them. I know the executive director was my boss, Joseph Verghese. We'll talk a lot about him. I am negative on Joseph. One thing I'm really annoyed about is that he won't come on this program. Of course, if I were him, why would he come on? Very small viewership. If anything, if he says something that doesn't sound good, doesn't look good, could go viral, could make him look really bad. And if he comes across, positively, then nobody will see it. So I get it. He's not going to raise money by being on this program. The only thing it can do is hurt him. And he also knows that I have real issues with his leadership. So of course he's not going to come on. But it's still disappointing because I want to have a dialogue with people who defend the Democratic Party. We used to have a guy on from another group who did defend the Democratic Party, did defending the Democrats. That guy won't come on this program anymore. Partly that's because I wasn't as respectful towards him as I should have been. Partly I think he just didn't like being challenged. It's unfortunate because there isn't, in my view, real intellectual honesty among the leadership in these groups. They're not willing to say, okay, well, we believed in an inside strategy. We tried to reform the party, but it hasn't worked. Let's go in a different direction. They won't say that. They can't say that because their bread is buttered exactly the same way Hakeem Jeffries is buttered. There's not as much butter on their bread, not nearly as much, but still more affluent, more privileged people are giving them money to promote a message that ultimately is counterproductive, harmful, destructive. So here we have our revolution last week. It says yesterday, but I cut this out last week. Billionaire super PACs and dark money groups. Maybe this was Sunday, actually. Billionaire super PACs and dark money groups drown out grassroots voices every election. That is true. Next week, DNC votes on banning, and I put that banning dark money in presidential primaries. We need your voice. Okay, so they're fundraising on that. You can see the link. I had a lot of problems with that. I clicked on the link, first of all, so you get to this page first, right? Is this End Citizens United, which I guess is a group they're working with, Our Revolution is working with, and they have a clip from End Citizens United, and they CNN and promoting this guy Ken Martin. Ken Martin is the DNC chair. So Our Revolution has been behind Ken Martin from the beginning. Our Revolution has been supporting Ken Martin. They wanted him to be the chair. They promoted, they actually took a victory lap. We're going to play clips where we'll see the victory lap that Our Revolution took when Ken Martin became the DNC chair. And they're saying, hey, he wants to ban, at least in the original post by Our Revolution, he wants to ban dark money. They use the word ban. Now, if you go to the actual click, they don't say ban because he ain't trying to ban it. They're saying restrict corporate and dark money. And a lot of people in the posts and the Facebook, kind of took it. They were like, wait, you misspelled ban because he doesn't say ban. He wants to restrict it. And it's not even a rules change. It's a resolution. So you click on it, and then, of course, you get to the real reason for the post, is if you're going to tell the DNC, you add your name, and then you're asked to contribute. I didn't click on. I guess I did, and I did. I think I did sign this. I don't have the actual, see where it says, support the landmark thing. So I did, and then you do ultimately get to a page where they're asking you for money. So in the end, it is about fundraising. So you click on that. Once you sign, then you get to this page. So I don't see, and you can even see it, I did sign. So it's about, in the end, how can we raise money? Like, can we get on this? We'll say we're going to ban dark money, and once you sign on, we're going to ask you to contribute. Now, I'll give them this. a lot of groups, for example, Trump, I get these emails from Trump and he's like, do you believe this? Do you believe that? And I always try to, they only give you a couple of choices and whatever the answer you give is a bad one. But, to the extent I can kind of put a fly in the ointment of their quiz, their surveys, I try. But a lot of times you can't even submit it, right? They'll say before we accept, you click submit. First, you go to a contribution page, give to submit your response, contribute. So our revolution doesn't do that. They do allow you to submit your response to their poll, or they allow you to submit your demand to ban dark money before you give. But I mean, I don't know, why they would require you to give first. I mean, people aren't going to give first in any event as a condition of, they're not going to say, well, I want to send a message to the DNC, but I have to give money first. So I don't think people would do that. DNC chair, whereas people would say, well, I want to give a message to Trump and I will give because I support Trump. I don't think you'd get quite the same positive feedback. Maybe I'm wrong, but again, whatever. Our revolution, to its credit, fair is fair. You can send a message to the DNC through our revolution without first contributing to our revolution. Then once you send the message, they hit you up for money. DNC chair, and see, this is what's really happening, is taking steps to restrict corporate and dark money in 2028 primaries. And even that's a little strong. We're going to get to what they actually did. There's Ken Martin. It's important to understand, it's only the 2028 primaries. We're not talking about all congressional elections. We're not talking about congressional primaries. And it's not even the 2028 primaries. It says 2028, but, well, we'll get to it. Let me, I'm getting ahead of myself. That even overstates it, or at least what actually the DNC did. Maybe the original plan was all primaries. The CNN says what he really was doing. And remember, our revolution told you in its fundraising appeal that they're pressuring the DNC to support a ban on dark money in primaries. What CNN tells you is it's a way, they're exploring ways to eliminate corporate and dark money donation, exploring ways in the primary cycle. What actually happened was this, and it gets confusing. I get it. They ultimately passed, it says, and again, even this is the Common Dreams headline. Common Dreams headline, 10 years in the making, DNC passes resolution to limit dark money in primaries. And you can see our revolution, again, jumping in front of this bus. Our revolution board member, Larry Cohen, saying corporate money has been a disaster. Look, this is great. We're getting it out. We're getting it out. All right. It's not all primaries. It's only the Republican. It's only the presidential primary. So it has nothing to do with congressional races or Senate races, primaries. The actual bill, if you read the Common Dreams article that was passed, the resolution, calls for creating a panel. So there's no new rule. There's no actual change in the party's policy when it comes to taking dark money. They still can. Candidates still can. It's only calling for a panel to pursue real enforceable steps the DNC can take to eliminate corporate and dark money in its presidential primary process. So actually nothing changes. Nothing. Apparently Jane Klebb, also an Our Revolution board member, was ecstatic. Finally, is what she shouted when they passed this bill, this resolution, to create a panel to explore ways. So you see how the party does nothing. It makes no meaningful changes. They kick the can down the road. The the panel isn't even going to look at congressional primaries, Senate race primaries. So the same corrupt people, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Wesley Bell, $12 million AIPAC man in St. Louis, who sicked his thugs on town hall attendees, they're not going to be impacted by the recommendations, even if they're accepted, since the panel's only recommendations relate to the presidential primary process. And who are the candidates who are likely to be impacted by this? They're already fully controlled by, they're already AIPAC puppets. Pete, maybe Kamala if she runs. I don't know if this is true, Rahm Emanuel might run for president in 28. There's no Gavin Newsom. There's no pro-Palestine voices. There's no pro-peace voices in that process. We're waiting to hear from Newsom. He's never come out and said anything much. DNC's doing nothing. They're doing nothing. It's so incredibly frustrating. Not a clip here I was going to play of Joseph from Our Revolution, but you know what? I don't see the need. Let's just get, I'll play it in a little bit. So that was the DNC at its finest. I mean, as weak, as meaningless as this panel, the creation of a panel is, that does nothing to change the rules, doesn't in any way shame, chide, admonish, insist, guide candidates for president not to take dark money. As much as they didn't actually do anything to stop it, it's the DNC at its finest. I mean, Larry Cohen's dancing a jig. Jane Klebb is finally, we've got a panel to explore whether we should restrict dark money in the president. I mean, we need a panel to do that. That's the DNC at its finest. Here's the DNC at its, and I wanted to say at its worst because this is just DNC business as per usual. Nothing changes with the Democratic Party. And that's why we have to change. We have to stop supporting it. We have to stop backing it. DNC punts on dueling Israel. So this is the normal business as usual. DNC punts. Chair Ken Martin calls for bridging the divide. Oh, well, we've got a divide. What's the divide? Is the divide between those who say we have to totally cut Israel off completely and those who say, yeah, we need to cut Israel off completely. And not only that, we need to send the military in to protect Palestinians. Because that seems to me to be where the divide should be. Obviously, we all can agree, or 93% of Democrats are now saying, Democratic voters are saying we should no longer support Israel. 93% say we shouldn't support Israel. 93%. So there's really no divide there. The divide, I think, would be more those who think, well, we shouldn't support Israel. We shouldn't sell them weapons. We shouldn't give them anything. But we also really shouldn't deploy our military into Gaza to protect the Gazan and Palestinians from Israel. Now, I think we should, right? I think we're responsible at this point. I don't think we should be sending our troops into Ukraine to protect Ukrainians from Russia because I don't think we're responsible, really. I mean, to a degree, we are responsible for that war because we did kind of instigate it, and we did provoke Putin. But we're not responsible in the sense that we didn't actually tell Putin, go ahead, invade Ukraine. Yeah, we'll help you out. But we are responsible for the Gaza slaughter because we've given Israel the weapons. We're actually also underwriting Israel's debt. Israel can afford, Israel is, as I understand it, their economy is really doing poorly. It's a wartime footing, and they have huge debt. They're spending far more than their tax revenues can support. So they're issuing debt, massive debt, Israeli bonds. And those bonds would normally be very high interest, low quality, maybe just above junk bond status, because who knows if Israel could ever repay them. So Israel wouldn't be able to raise very much money on those bonds and would owe a huge debt on them normally. But the U.S. is underwriting. We're the co-signer. So if Goldman Sachs buys Israeli bonds, they probably do, and Israel defaults, guess who's on the hook? You are. The American taxpayer is on the hook if Israel defaults. And that, because of that, because the bond sellers and the bond purchasers, and I say the sellers because Goldman Sachs buys the bonds and it turns around and sells them, the reason they will purchase those bonds from Israel with relatively low interest rates, relatively low return, given the risk of default, is that they can go to the U.S. government and say, you pay. You're guaranteeing them. And that means Israel can borrow more money, much more money than it normally could, and use that borrowed funds to buy the weapons it's using to kill Gazans, to massacre Gaza, to eradicate Palestine, to commit genocide. That's what our government is doing. That's what both parties support. So the question is really, when you have dueling Israel resolutions, if the Democratic Party represents the will of the people, is the two dueling resolutions would be, do we just cut Israel off completely? Or do we cut Israel off completely and send in the U.S. military to protect Gaza, which is what I think we should do. Those aren't the two dueling resolutions. There was a resolution which would have actually called for a military arms embargo and suspension of military aid to Israel, which of course we should do. But Ken Martin, he didn't want that. Ken Martin called for unrestricted aid to Gaza and a two-state solution. So the chair, the guy that our revolution loves so much, he promoted a dueling resolution against the Florida members' resolution, which would be to simply cut off all support for Israel completely. Well, Martin said, well, no, but we're really upset by what we see in Gaza, so let's provide a call for unrestricted aid and a two-state solution. As soon as the bill, the resolution rather, to cut off Israel was defeated, in part it may have been defeated. I mean, it would have lost anyway, because these DNC members are much more pro-Israel. They're much more Zionist than the average Democratic voter. So they don't reflect the will of the Democrat rank and file, the constituents. They don't represent them in any way, in any meaningful way. They don't represent their wishes, their interests, their values. But it almost only the original, the bill, the resolution to cut off Israel would have failed. But it was easier. It was easier. Martin made it easier for DNC members to vote against it because he had, well, we've got a competing bill. It's not quite as strong, but still we're calling for a two-state solution. We're calling for unrestricted aid to Gaza. As soon as he defeated her bill and his resolution passed, he pulled it. He said, nah, we're gonna pull it. We need to keep working through this issue that's roiling the party. So we're not even going to call for a two-state solution. We're not even going to do that. We're not going to call for unrestricted aid to Gaza. We're not going to do that. We're just going to keep talking about this. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a committee, kind of like that committee that we appointed to get dark money out. Well, we're going to have another committee. We're going to put stakeholders on all sides and continue to have a conversation and work through this. Allison Minnerly, the Florida DNC member who submitted the failed measure, said it was disappointing when it's clear that voters want Of course it's clear. Of course it's disappointing. At some point, we, the voters, have to say, we've had enough of this crap. We're not going to keep eating their turd sandwiches. We've got to move on. It's just horrible. It's just so awful what they did. And there's no way, you can't spin this. You can't make it okay. You can't say it's an all right thing the way our revolution will try. I got this. I wanted to show a couple of thoughts here. So this was a Facebook dialogue. I like to have these because, like I said, unfortunately, the people who disagree with me on these issues won't come on the program. They won't argue with me. They won't try to defend their position. They certainly won't ever consider changing their position. But I saw this on Facebook from a friend of mine, and their response to my criticism of the Democratic Party and its complete failure to behave, in an acceptable way, to pursue policies that the voters want and that are good, that would make life better. The defense is, well, this is what the American people want. Middle-class working people like my father, once they became successful, became Reagan Republicans overnight. Part of what made Democratic politicians shift was the fact that voters did. I don't totally reject that, at least at first. Sure, it is true. Reagan was elected over Carter. There are a lot of reasons for that. Nixon was elected over Humphrey. And sometimes voters do become a little more conservative. That's not an excuse for a party to do the wrong thing. The Democratic Party, led by Tip O'Neill, voted for the massive Reagan tax cuts that also cost the middle class billions of dollars, when subsequently the Congress had to raise taxes on the middle class to pay for the slashing of taxes on the rich. Democrats didn't have to do that. There was no demand that they cut, the Democrats didn't have to cut taxes on the billionaire class. They could have fought that. But okay, it's true. There is a little bit of a yin and a yang. There's a back and forth. Voters do go back and forth. Sometimes you may embrace slightly more conservative policies. I understand that. But now we have a time when it's clear the American public is far to the left of both parties on many issues. Example, Florida, red state Florida voted for a $15 minimum wage. Example, both political parties are far, the voters in both political parties are far to the left of the electeds when it comes to Israel. Most Americans support Medicare for all. The people are far to the left of both parties. The Democratic Party does not represent the constituents. The constituents have not pushed the party to the right. It's just the opposite. And what you see is, again, a refusal to acknowledge this. Instead, the people need to change. The politicians will follow. No, it's not an excuse to say, well, some of my voters want. Some voters do want a return to segregation. That doesn't mean you vote for it. Some voters do support genocide. That doesn't mean you support it. And most don't. Most don't. But not the billionaire class, not the donor class. Is that vote not to even call for unrestricted aid to Gaza? The decision not to even call for that? Is that what Democrats want? Is it the Democratic voters' fault? Well, that's not what Truth Out says. Truth Out covering this. DNC flamed for rejecting measure backing arms embargo to Israel. One advocate slammed the vote as standard practice for a historically unpopular Democratic leadership. Absolutely. Of course it is. And the proponent of the legislation noted only 7% support the Democratic Party's current position. That current position, unrestricted aid to Israel. No change in policy. Sell Israel everything it wants. We give them Iron Dome. Of that, when it comes to that view, only 7% of Democrats hold it. And yet, that's the party continue. That's what the party continues with. tragic, immoral, indefensible, inexcusable. And we still don't have any call for something different, for a change. We don't have any demand from Democratic-leaning groups that their members abandon the party. We don't see that. How can that be? Well, I'll tell you how that can be. Because the groups themselves are captive to the same special interests, the same donor class. They're not the same party. They view their future, the individual's future, as tied to the party's future. So here, I just looked this up. Our evolution. Look at this. So here's the 23 return that they submitted. So Guy Verghese, the ED, executive director, makes a good living, $171,000. Now, I'm not saying that's enormous. I mean, it's not like, he's a Georgetown law graduate. I never made that kind of money. I'm a Georgetown law graduate. But sure, lots of his classmates, my classmates, probably most, make a lot more money. That's a hell of a good gig. You're on TV, you're quoted in the New York Times. You want to write a book, you want to write articles, they'll get published. It's a hell of a gig. And you don't want to give that up. And the people who contributed these organizations, the donors, they're to the right of the rank and file. Look at who are the directors of our revolution. You have 3 in blue there. They're all closely tied to the Democrat Party. Larry Cohen, DNC member. Jane Klebb, DNC member. Keith Ellison, Democratic Attorney General in Minnesota, former DNC co-chair, I believe, or second chair. So that's why these parties act the way they do, because their leadership, their deciders, have very different values and interests than you do. Let's go to Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi, Hal. So I just want to say that I think the rank and file of the Democratic Party, to a large extent, honestly doesn't know what to do. And I mean, maybe that's colored by the fact that I don't know what to do, but it almost seems to me like each election we are in ever more existential straits with respect to the Republican option. And it's almost, if you didn't know any better, you would think that the Democratic Party was deliberately manipulating everything so that you have to vote for us because the alternative is too awful, that making that situation ever more dire. It seems that almost every election, it's been more like if the Republicans get in, it's going to be worse, has been yet more dire. And, right now, I just think those of us who completely disagree with so much that the corporate Democrats are doing, and it's so horrendously angering that they did what they did on the Gaza resolutions, and it seems like the chair probably put his in there just to fake people out to get them to vote down the better one and then remove it. And it's almost like they're manipulating these things to make, to put to say it's going to be your fault, like the biblical story of the
like they blamed the left for Kamala's loss. They blamed the left for Hillary's loss. 100%. The only answer I can give is to vote when you can, when there's an option for non-Democrats, Stephanie. Otherwise, I mean, getting involved in these organizations is great if you can push them to the left, but it seems like you can't. I mean, they've shut me down repeatedly when I pushed for them to abandon the Democrats. The corruption reaches way down. Unpaid members of Democratic Central Committees, they still hope, their hope is that they'll at some point become appointed or become elected to office and get some money out of it. It's
careerism.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like we are watching an authoritarian takeover of the United States right now. It's happened. And, there's a part of me that's like, okay, we've got to elect Democrats to get this guy out of there, and then we'll live to fight another day. But at the same time, they're doing these things that are so odious as well. So I don't really know what the answer is. I feel at a loss. And even the talking heads that are ranting, both on the left and the corporate Dems about what's going on with Trump right now and his takeover of D.C. and his complete flouting of the Constitution and disrespect for all of our, checks and balances. They're saying, we need more people in the streets. We need more people doing something. But there's no one organizing a resistance to Trump. And it's almost as though the Democrats are just as happy being a minority party as long as they keep their jobs, as long as they keep their consultant gigs.
I would just parse a little bit what you said. I think people like Bernie and AOC are trying to organize resistance to Trump, but what they're not providing is a vision for a better America under their rule, under their governance. So it's not much of a resistance if you're just saying vote for us. We won't be as bad, because basically their message is we're not as bad as he is. Not if you elect us, we're going to move heaven and earth to guarantee you health care. We're going to move heaven and earth to stop the genocide. They won't call out their fellow Democrats who are just as bad. So I get why you're so at a loss, because I don't have answers either. And I just want to make one other point on that and then get your response, and then I'm going to let you go. But you had I believe it was you who recommended me to attend Icarus Fest in New Jersey, the gray zone organized event. I did attend it. Max, Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, a number of others, very educational. But you know what? I asked Max, what should we do? And he didn't have, he says, I'm a journalist. I don't have answers to what we should do. I just tell you what's happening, not how to respond to it. And they didn't have answers either, Stephanie.
Yeah, no, I mean, no one knows what to do. No one, and that's the thing. People are wringing their hands and watching what's going on. And, the Democratic argument in the next election, which, as you've seen probably, the numbers for registration by party are really ominous for the Democrats. Their argument is going to be, if you do not elect us, we lose democracy and forever, asterisk. We know that we didn't really ever have it. But, we lose all of the things that have kept us a stable society under military authoritarian rule, as far as the eye can see. And that's really going to be their only argument. And I don't know. I honestly have no idea what to do. And the only thing I can think is, it's got to be a global left movement. So, I'm signing up for Democracy in Europe 2025, DM 2025, Mira 2025 list, but they don't have a U.S. chapter yet. And I don't want to lead anything. I want to follow, So I don't know what to do, Hal.
It's really bad. I don't have an answer either. I got the clip from Harriet, and I'm going to play it from yesterday's CNN about how the Democrat Party continues to implode, continues to lose support. I mean, the one thing I would say to Democrats who make the argument, well, you got to vote for us, or the world is really going to come to an end, or America free democracy will end. If I would say to them, if you believe that, then you need to come to me. Then you need to embrace Medicare for all. You need to call for an end to genocide. If you really believe that the only answer to Trump is to defeat him at the box, no matter what, because otherwise we're all doomed. If you believe that, then change your policies.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're never willing to do that.
No, because they enjoy great privileges and they want to keep enjoying them.
Yep. All right, Hal. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for calling. I really appreciate it. I know it's a little bit dispiriting, but I don't have anything else to add. I guess what I would say is we have to vote wherever possible for Greens, for non-Democrats, whenever it arises. Here's Harry N. He's going to explain to you just how bad things are right now. And then And then, then I'm going to move on. But I will say, you can see it right there. Democrat brand has about the same appeal with American voters right now as the Cracker Barrel rebrand. And let's go to Harry right now.
Democratic brand right now has about the appeal with the American voter as the Cracker Barrel rebrand has with the American consumers. Bad, bad, bad. What are you doing? Oh, my goodness gracious. What are we talking about here in terms of big party registration changes in the key swing states? Let's look at the key 4 swing states that, in fact, do keep track of registration by party. Look, the Republican Party is in their best position at this point in the cycle since at least 2005, and all 4 of these key battleground states. We go out to the Southwest, Arizona. How about Nevada? Republicans haven't done this well since 2005. Oh, my goodness gracious, at this point in the cycle. North Carolina, I couldn't find a point at which Republicans were doing better at this point in the cycle. It's at least this century. It probably goes way back in the last century. And Pennsylvania, very similar. Republicans doing better at this point than at any point this century, at least as far as I could find. Now, what types of gains are we talking about?
I'm going to just stop it for a second. I'm going to play more. This is about almost a 3-minute clip, and I think it's all worth listening to, all worth viewing. This is from yesterday. This isn't like cherry picked from 3 months ago. This is right now. And I want you to think about this. Trump is not popular. Trump's popularity is in decline too. If you watch other other clips with Harry N., he'll talk about it. He'll say, yeah, people don't like the Republicans either. The Democrats' brand is in the toilet because they stand for nothing. They'll fight for nothing. They have no values. Their only case to the American public is, we're not Trump, we're not as bad, and that won't work. You can't beat something with nothing. And people say, well, Trump is just bad, bad, bad. So you're trying to beat bad with nothing. Yeah, but Trump's not all bad in every respect. It's certainly not from working class perspective. The tariffs do have a real upside. We've already talked about that. Manufacturing appears to be up in this country. Manufacturing employment is up. Trump does talk about trying to end the war with Ukraine, and it looks in Ukraine with Russia, and it looks like that may happen. So there are some silver linings in what is truthfully a terribly dark cloud. But Democrats have no proposals, nothing. Their shining light, Mamdani, they are running away from, treating him like a bad smell. If the Democratic argument is you have to vote for us to stop Trump and Trump is an existential threat, then again, my response is, then why don't you change? Why don't you recognize the American people are in pain right now, that the working class is suffering right now? And it's suffering in large part because of your policies, the policies that you backed, that you championed. Why don't you acknowledge that? Why don't you change your policies? Why don't you call for real, meaningful improvements in the quality of life for the American people? Because they don't want to do it. They don't care. Don't give a crap. Vote for that. I won't vote for that.
Party. Well, let's compare it to this point during the first.
And not only will I not vote for that, but obviously the American people won't vote for that.
Back in 2017. Look at this. The Republican Party gains in party registration compared to this point back in 2017 during the Trump first administration. In Arizona, you got a Republican gain of 3 points. Okay, how about Nevada? Up the hill we go, even though we're sticking in the Southwest, a gain of 6 points. How about, again, we come to the East Coast, North Carolina, a gain of 8 points for the Republicans. And in the Keystone State, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, again, we're talking about a gain of 8 points. My goodness gracious, for Republicans, they are converting old former Democrats to their side of the ledger, as well as picking up new voters, registering new voters, and it absolutely paid off for them back in the 2024 election. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been president since January. Are there any bright spots for Democrats? Have they picked up any ground since January 1 in terms of party registration? Not in these key swing states, these 4 key swing states.
No gains. No gains in party registration. Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Those are, well, with the exception of Nevada, those are pretty big states, and they're all important states. All of them. Now, it's what a dumpster fire this party is and continues to be.
It's what are we talking about? Party registration margin gains since January 1, 2025. Which party's gained in Arizona? The GOP. How about Nevada? The GOP. North Carolina? The GOP. How about in Pennsylvania? We'll make it 4 for 4. The GOP. The bottom line is this, Jessica Dean. When it comes to party registration, Republicans have made massive gains compared to 8 years ago. They are in their best position in these key 4 swing states dating back at least 20 years. You have to go back at least 20 years, at least in the case of Nevada, longer in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. So Republicans looking pretty gosh darn good, at least when it comes to party registration. And we'll see what happens down the road. But at this point, as I said at the beginning, the Democratic brand is in about as good a position as the Cracker Barrel rebrand. It is bad, bad, bad for the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, it seems so clear. And why should anyone be surprised? I'm always sort of astonished that people are surprised. And the contempt that is shown for folks who voted for Trump, or who don't vote for the Democrats is, but look at how bad Trump is. Yes, he's bad. But if people are hungry, if people are desperate, if people are in fear, are afraid, they'll give up their freedoms. And the Democratic Party has failed signally to address the legitimate economic anxieties of the American public for decades. It has failed to address those, and in many cases has worsened those anxieties. Even if you make the argument, and I think it can be made, the Republican Party likewise has done really bad things, maybe been worse when it comes to American voters' anxieties. The Republican Party gives you something. They give you scapegoats. They give you people, someone to blame. Democrats won't even do that. Democrats could do that. Democrats could say, yeah, it's the billionaires' class. It's the billionaire class's fault, and we're going to take them on. We're going to raise their taxes. We're going to take away some of their special dispensations. The Democrat Party doesn't do that. And that's why they lose. That's why we're losing. Thank you for being part of Halitics. I'll be back tomorrow.